And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin Bible podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome to Talkin Bible with me, Rohan Bell, and Jeannie Schwartz. You're back for another week, Jeannie. Hello, Jeannie.
Yeah, I feel like I never left.
Well, it feels like a long time since I've recorded anything, so...
Oh, really?
Yes.
I feel like I see you every day.
Yeah,
I don't know, recording.
That's because you're editing all the videos and
Yes.
posting them on social.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is me, yes. So I do. I see a lot of this Talking Bible
You
stuff.
probably see more of me than my wife does, which is probably not a good thing.
No, I don't think it is.
We need to find an intern to do that editing for you, Jeannie.
But I do like, though, when it freezes on an image of you and it's a funny face.
There was a
Yeah.
crazy one like that the other day. I
That
think,
makes
wasn't
me
there, for
laugh.
those? Yes. There was a few crazy ones. My face isn't really that attractive anyway. But anyway, let's move on. We're talking to this week. Well, today is Monday. We're talking about the beatitudes. So today's beatitude is "Blessed are the persecuted." One of Jesus. Blessed are the persecuted. So that seems contrary, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't even know what it means.
Blessed are the persecuted. So should we have a look? What do you want to do? Do you want to start there and
Yeah,
read
I'll
it?
just read it for you. So This one is from Matthew 5. Verses 10 to 12. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of their righteousness, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. You are blessed when they insult you and persecute you and falsely say every kind of evil against you because of me. Be glad and rejoice, because your reward is great in heaven, for that is how they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you, insult you, and slander your name as evil because of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. Take note, your reward is great in heaven, for this is the way the ancestors used to treat the prophets.
Interesting, isn't it? So it's not what you would expect him to be saying. I mean, he's really saying to them, life's going to be hard. You're going to face some persecution, but you're blessed. You're makurios. You're living the good life when you're blessed.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
No, it's upside down kingdom stuff, Jeannie.
Yeah. Yes, it is, but it still makes
no
no
sense.
How
right.
can I be blessed when somebody hates me?
Yes.
When they exclude me and insult me? I mean, that to me sounds like I need a really good psychologist to just speak through that.
To be able to process through the trauma of that. Because obviously in this context, Jesus is advocating for the fact that this is a persecution that's coming not because you're being I'm trying to think of a word that's appropriate to say on YouTube. You're not being a real idiot. This is
you can say anything on YouTube, by the way.
You probably can. Yeah, that's right. But you're not being a person that's putting, that's creating havoc in your own world by the way you behave. This is you're blessed are you who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. So this is.
Sorry, what does righteousness mean?
So this is living right. So righteousness simply means, this is probably good for us evangelicals to understand, the meaning of righteousness in the Bible doesn't just, we kind of sugarcoat it as though, we're just righteous now. That means we're somehow perfect in every way. It's more practical and more down to earth than that. It means to live in right relationship with God and right relationship with people. So to be righteous is to strive to live in right relationship. So blessed are those who are striving to live in right relationship with God and with people.
Okay, how do you live in right relationship with God and how do you live in right relationship with people?
Well, Jesus is advocating here that probably there's going to be plenty of people you can't do that with because you're going to be persecuted because you're trying to do that. Isn't that interesting?
Oh,
you're trying to live in right relationship with people
Yes.
and you're going to receive persecution when you do.
Well, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Really?
If I'm trying to live right, but I'm still persecuted because of it, that just seems unfair.
Unfair? Okay.
Yes.
Right. All right. What about if in the effort of me wanting to live in right relationship with people, it involves me having to speak up for a person who is not being treated fairly? It might be a situation maybe it's a marriage and there's some kind of abusive control situation going on in that marriage and it's out of hand and in an effort to speak up for the person that's suffering in that marriage, I am speaking up for righteousness. I'm trying to restore right relationships there, but in the process of getting involved in that relationship, I have become persecuted by the abuser. I'm going to receive the persecution. I'm putting myself in a position where I can receive the same persecution that victim in that relationship is receiving. Does that make it right or wrong for me to do it? I still believe Jesus would say you still should speak up for those who cannot speak up for themselves. You should put yourself in a vulnerable place. But Jesus is going to say, but be aware when you do, whenever you try to put yourself out there to live right and restore healthy relationships, there are going to be people who don't like it. And more often than not, those people are going to persecute you. They are going to, they're not going to like what you're doing, so they're going to persecute you. And what that looks like, what persecution looks like, is a whole different question. You know, it's not always just violence. It wasn't in the New Testament time. There was public shaming. There was, you weren't allowed to buy and sell. You'd be ostracized from your community. You could be, people often wouldn't, if you were in business, they wouldn't buy product from you. All those sorts of things. They're all part of what persecution is. And the early church suffered it tremendously.
Yeah, because I think what you're talking about there's a difference between how they were persecuted to how we are persecuted.
Yeah,
so
elaborate for me.
What is the kind of persecution that Jesus meant? Is it that he meant, hey, you're persecuted because somebody doesn't like what you're doing and says nasty things about you? Or are you persecuted when you are strung up on a cross and killed?
Yes. Okay. What about all of the above? Even in that time it was. The persecution ranged from, like I said, public slander, public shaming, ostracizing in the community, all the way through to martyrdom. It's all, I think Jesus would say, it's all part of the plan of the enemy. It's all part of the hatred that's in the world. At its root cause is sin and pride, and we will suffer that when we want to live by a different standard that is putting ourselves out there to speak up for others, to bring justice to the world. We will put ourselves at, we'll put a target on our back with those that don't want the weak to be supported.
You talking about standing up for the standing up, what did you say?
Standing up for a victim, for instance.
Standing up
in a situation
for a
like that, yes.
Okay. That sounds different again to me than, say, for example, if you are out preaching the word of God, or let's put it in...
Preaching the gospel, if
Preaching
you like.
the gospel, or even put it back in the 300s or something. And I've got this story. I read this story and I don't have it in my notes. I remember it, where these two women were converted Christians. They were citizens of Rome, but their name starts with P something.
I'll probably need more information.
Okay, but they are thrown to the lions in the
Colosseum or in the arena.
And one is actually brutally killed on basically a cross as well. But they weren't trying to stand up for any victims. They were actually trying to spread the gospel.
Yep. So they were standing up for Jesus.
Standing up for Jesus, yeah. There's two different things. Standing up for the victim or preaching the gospel.
Yeah, I don't think they're as separated as us modern people might think they are. So modern evangelicals will often say, oh yeah, you're persecuted for preaching the gospel, but there's very little talk about speaking up for the vulnerable. But I think the two go hand in hand. If you're going to, well, let's put it this way. It's possible to care for a vulnerable person and not do it from a Christian ethos. There are lots of good people in the world who do good things for others, speak up for others, but may not be doing it from a Christian ethos, maybe from another religious perspective or maybe from another worldview. However, the flip side is that I believe it's impossible to speak up for Jesus and not speak up for others. And that's what these early Christian preachers were doing. They were going around spreading the good news about Jesus. But the good news about Jesus wasn't just asking people to raise their hand and come to an altar call. It was spreading life. It was spreading love. It was kindness. It was taking in the weak and the foreigner and the orphan and making them part of the community and loving them. The two go hand in hand. You can't separate them out. The early church didn't separate them out, and I think we have made a mistake by doing so. So whether we're persecuted for sticking up for Jesus or for sticking up for the things that Jesus sticks up for, it's the same thing. It's the same root cause that's bringing that persecution, and that is the enemy who wants to steal and kill and destroy.
And so how are you blessed in that persecution?
Yeah, all right. That's okay. So that's where we've talked about, I think we may have done a couple of these podcasts, and we've preached a little bit in our church on the beatitudes this year already. The word makurios, the word that is translated blessed, means that you're living the good life, that you're already receiving something. It's already stored up for you. So Jesus, what he's saying is that he's not saying that, hey, the thing that is happening to you, the persecution, the ostracizing, the martyrdom, even at that point, it's not that that's good. It's that if you trust God, God will bring good in it. In fact, God has already brought good in it. Blessed are the persecuted for, what does it say? For righteousness' sake, for the king. What was the blessing that goes with that? What was the makurios blessing?
The kingdom of heaven.
The kingdom of heaven is theirs. That's what I thought it said. Yeah, the kingdom of heaven is theirs. So when you are being persecuted, whatever that looks like, for sticking up for what is right in the world and sticking up for the values of Jesus in the world and bringing those things, you are actually experiencing the kingdom. you have the kingdom on the inside of you, and you might be at war with the kingdom of darkness, because the kingdom of darkness is not liking the fact that you're bringing the kingdom of God to the earth. But Jesus is saying, but rest in that, because in the end, only one kingdom is going to prevail, and that's why you're blessed, because you're on the winning side.
Okay.
And that becomes hope and encouragement to keep going, not to push back. We were just talking about this off air before we started. Even in some of our YouTube videos, you might get people who are antagonistic. And, and I was just saying how we don't want to get into that whole fight back kind of thing. But a lot of Christians do. They feel defensive, so they fight back. But what that actually does in the effort to try and stand up for Jesus doesn't need that much defense. It's more about our own pride being hurt or our own faith being threatened. But if we can respond in a loving, Christ-like way to persecution, whether that's a nasty comment on a YouTube video or whether that's, something far worse than that, the goal of the Christian way is to find a way to represent Jesus well and to show kindness, graciousness. Doesn't mean you can't tell truth. You can still have truth, but have it put it through the lens of kindness, through the filter of Christ-like attitude towards the lost.
What if I took this verse literally and thought to myself, oh, I need to be blessed, so I need to be persecuted. So I'm going to go out there and intentionally pick a fight to make myself persecuted so that I will be blessed. Do you think anybody ever does that?
A few crazy people probably would. The problem with that mentality is it's a little bit like saying I'm giving to be I'm giving so I can receive a blessing. It sounds to me like your question is basically, I'm lost for words now myself. It's basically suggesting that the motive behind being persecuted is to receive a blessing. So I'm going to do this so I get something back. I think that's the problem. Is that's not the motive of any of the Beatitudes. In fact, that's not really the motive of Jesus. We shouldn't be doing things in order to get something back, because that's a cloudy line between selfishness and selflessness. The Christian upside-down kingdom is I do this because it's the right thing to do, not because I'm going to receive some blessing. Okay, I'm going to go out there and be, a pighead on the street and upset everybody and get persecuted because then I'll feel good about myself because I've received a blessing.
But in the same way, I would want to be meek to be blessed. That's the way I'm asking the question.
Yeah, okay. The problem is, it's not that it's totally wrong, but if the blessing, quote unquote, becomes the goal, that's back to front in life. And I actually think there are a lot of Christians who get that wrong. We do what we do because we think that there's some kind of heavenly reward. Or we do what we do for the motive of those things. And there is, and it's not that those things aren't right. But if a selfish motive is the reason we go out to do things, whether that's to be meek or to allow persecution or to be generous or whatever it might be, if the reason is we're going to get something back, that's not the heart of God. That's the upside down kingdom. That's not the upside down kingdom. So we need, while those things are true, they shouldn't be our motives. Our motives should always be, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's the way of the kingdom.
I think I'm thinking about this backwards, but I'm intentionally doing it because when you go to church, people will say from the front, you're going to be blessed today. God is going to bless you. And you even say at the end, have a blessed week.
Yes,
God bless.
Yeah.
But then some people walk away and go, I don't have any blessings at all in my life. I don't see any blessings. But what if I intentionally
I see.
made myself be persecuted? Can I then receive a blessing if I make myself meek? Is that how I get the blessing? Because everybody's after a blessing of God.
All right. Everyone's after a blessing. Yeah, okay. No, I'm with you. I'm tracking with you. I still think there's just be careful that you're not chasing the blessings.
Well, for example, here, you're blessed when they insult you. So what if I go and stand out on the corner and I say, you're going to go to hell because you don't believe, but that makes me feel better. I'm getting the blessing somehow. I wonder if
that's not the right kind of blessing, though, because the motive behind it, seeking the blessing, seeking the feel good, was not the motive. No, my motive is I'm going to go out and stand on the street corner to promote the gospel and knowing that I'm going to be insulted. Okay.
Therefore, somehow I'm going to be blessed.
Okay, that's moving more towards a motive of wanting to do something for the kingdom as opposed to wanting to receive something from the kingdom. And I think that's getting closer to where I'm going with that. I wouldn't always advocate for being an obnoxious, person on the street corner doing that. That's not only because that's not always the most effective way to reach people. So I think you're on the right track, but I think the way of Christ is to make sure that our motives, if we look at our motives as much as possible, our motives are others focused. So if I'm going to go out there and preach, I'm not going out there and preaching just to defend Jesus, just so I can get a persecution. I'm going out there to preach about Jesus because I genuinely love people and I believe Jesus loves people and I believe that I have a truth that I want them to know. Now that might advocate for a person who wants to stand on their soapbox. It's not my style, but it might be that person might do that with that motive in mind. And I think they could receive some kind of blessing from God. They could receive something from God because their motive was others focused. And I think that's got to be the main key all the way through.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but I'm also going to throw in there that if I am this street preacher or I'm posting stuff on Instagram, I think I will feel validated when people persecute me.
Yes.
Because of this verse.
Yeah.
If I'm not being persecuted, am I doing anything right? Yeah. See, I get so confused with this verse. Maybe, it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so let's bring it back to who is Jesus talking to? He's talking to a bunch of peasants, people who are living a subsistence life, who really don't have any blessings.
Can you define peasants?
Well, these people were living on or basically just on or just below the poverty line, really. That subsistence life. They basically had enough. Most of these people would have had enough money to get by, but they had to work long hours and they had to work day to day. These weren't a people who had a lot of wealth in there.
So he's saying this on the mountain with all the people around.
With all the people around.
Wouldn't there be rich scribes or something?
There are a few, but that's not. But generally, the people Jesus is talking to on the Sermon on the Mount are the Galileans, who are lower class people, eking out a living, getting by. People who you wouldn't think will live in the blessed life. Just down the road, 5-6 kilometers down the road, is the city of Tiberias, from where Jesus is, and the people in there are living the blessed life. They're the wealthy aristocrats, and you would see that the people on the mountain would be thinking, what do you mean we're blessed? They're the blessed ones. They're the ones that have got everything, Jesus, not us. We're barely getting by. And it's interesting that Jesus is speaking to those people and saying, actually, you're the ones with the true blessing. If you live these ways, this is the real blessing. Not all the money in the bank account of, the guy down the road in Tiberias, but you who are living a life that is meek, that cares for the poor, that is persecuted for sticking up for what is right in the world, what is righteousness' sake. Blessed are you when you share my love, those sorts of things. That is actually the real blessing, not the money in the bank account. So it was an upending, upside down kind of worldview that Jesus was trying to put to them. Not that they could earn the blessing, but the presumption was he's actually talking to a people who don't feel like they're blessed and saying, in my kingdom, you're the ones who are already blessed, not those ones down the road. So he was trying to reverse their mind, not to get them to go out there and say, oh, how do I get a blessing? He's actually saying you're already blessed. He's talking to a people who don't think they are and showing them that they're actually living the blessed life.
Encouraging people to look for the good in their moment, the peace in their moment.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, the love in their world.
Yeah. And to help them to realize that they're not as badly off as perhaps they think they are in the eyes of the world. Because the eyes of the world says, well, you don't have anything. You're under Roman occupation. You don't have anything of yourself. You don't really have anything of value. You're not blessed. And Jesus is saying, that's not how blessing works in my kingdom. It's actually upside down. When you're trying to do the right thing and the wealthy, the rich, the aristocrats, the abusive people in the world are having a go at you, you're already blessed. Trust in that blessing.
All right. Okay. I'm going to keep thinking through what you're saying there. I just have one further question on this. It's actually probably a loaded question. Go ahead. See how you answer it in one sentence. Okay. No. How does this verse or these verses fit in with the prosperity teaching?
Yes. Okay. It is a loaded question.
Because churches are big on that, particularly in the States. You come, your God is going to bless you.
God's going to give you everything. Well, that's
you're faith-filled when you have more money. It's going to come. Your best days ahead of you.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yep. I think that's part of the problem, to be honest, is that unless the message is transferable in all cultures throughout time, then it's probably not a full gospel message. That's not to say that there isn't aspects in the scriptures that indicate that financial wealth can be a blessing. It's not that it's not there. However, it's not that financial wealth is the only sign of blessing. and that if a person doesn't have, then they're not blessed, and if they do have, they are blessed. I believe a person can be blessed without, and a person can be blessed with. And it's obviously probably got more to do with what you do with that. If you're coming to church and the message is, hey, you can live your best life and get wealthy and all that sort of stuff, it's back to motive again. It's turned Jesus into a vending machine where we just, we pay our duty, put our coins in the machine, and Jesus just spits out a good life for us.
But isn't that what people preach by?
Oh, yeah.
If you give your tithes, you will be blessed. God's storehouse is bigger, so the more you give, the more you get.
That's where it swings over too far into the selfish mentality. It's not that there isn't a principle in the kingdom of God, the principle of sowing and reaping. So let me just pick on this one for a minute. Let's say that there is a principle that if you sow, you're going to reap a harvest. But if I'm sowing my tithes or my giving or my generosity, I'm sowing it in with the sole intention of getting back more for me, then I am not sowing with a kingdom heart. The principle may still work. You could even argue it's a principle, the principle of sowing and reaping God has put into the world. So generally speaking, it's in Proverbs, generally speaking, the one who gives gets more and the one who holds loses. It's a general principle of life that's into the world. The world of the generous gets bigger and bigger.
I understand that.
Right.
Yep.
So it could even hold, but I could still be living by that principle but still have a selfish motive. So the only reason I gave is really to get more for myself. And James, in his letter, he rebukes them for that. He says, you ask because you want to get it for yourself. You're asking with wrong motives. So my thought always around whether it's generosity or blessing or living out any of these beatitudes is, what is my motive? I may receive a blessing back, but if I can go, okay, I'm going to be generous with my finances, and if I receive back more finances, the motive behind me will continue to be, I want to be more generous with my finances. I want to be more of God's kingdom, not so I can have more and keep more for myself. It's a subtle heart issue, but it's a very significant heart issue. We're dealing with issues now that really get down into the core of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. What is my motive for living the way I am? Am I living this way because of gratitude for what Jesus has already done for me and I want to honor him with my life? Or am I living this way because I genuinely want to receive more stuff from Jesus or more blessing from Jesus or more peace from Jesus? Those motives are not healthy motives. In the end, their bubbles are nothing. They'll come falling down around us.
I think I need to talk to you more on this, because when you said that then, it was like, yeah, but I do want more peace. I do want more of Jesus. I do want more and more and more and more. So for me,
just to finish, what's your motive for wanting more? So if your motive for wanting more is so you can be happier or just more about you, that's where it's subtle. But if it's, I want more of Jesus so that I can be more like Jesus to the world around me, to others, I can represent him, I can live for him more, that's reflecting it back onto him rather than you being the source of the blessing. The way I've heard it described is, are we a conduit or not? If we're a conduit of God's blessing, God will pour into us, provided our attitude is we want to pour out what God has given into us. If we want to hold it for ourselves, that is where it's dangerous. It's a subtle difference. I can't actually tell from an outside whether or not someone's motive is that way or not. And to be honest, we're all going to have problems with it. We're all going to have moments. We've got broken hearts. We're all going to have moments where we're selfish. But part of the Christian maturity life is getting to that point where everything I have is given from God, and I steward everything I have, Lord. I just want to be faithful with what you've given me. By your grace, you let me to spend some on myself. You let me live some on myself. I want to be faithful with that, but I also want to honor you with my time and my talent and my treasure.
I can say at this point, you mentioned happier. I do want to be happier. My motive is because if God makes me happier, then I can be happier to those people
there you go.
around.
Yes, absolutely. So that's
particularly my kids.
Particularly your kids. So if you're more at peace, you'll be a better mother. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good example of what I'm talking about. It's not that the blessings that we receive stop with us. If our attitude is, I need to be better or more like Christ, because that will actually help me to reflect his life to others, then you've done that thing of turning it outward rather than just inward. That's the goal, I think, of the Christian life, is to be others focused.
Okay. All right. So I will rethink this entire verse.
We went way off persecution there, but yeah. Well, we started on it, but we went beyond that to all kinds of blessings, didn't we?
Yes. You could talk on this one for a long time because it undoes a lot of the prosperity teaching.
Yes, it does.
Undoes a lot of
Yeah, because prosperity
prior
teaching
faith.
says, you're going to be good and everything's going to be easy for your life. And Jesus is saying, no. If you're living for me, you're going to be persecuted. Yeah. Yep,
Yes.
absolutely.
All right, okay. Let's end that there because I have a lot more to talk about that, and I think over the next year we may come back and talk about it.
I'm sure we will. Okay. Thanks, Jeannie.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
everyone.
you.
Talk to you next time.